Are Christians commanded to go to church? Years ago, I was talking to a friend, and the subject came up kind of casually. And in the midst of the conversation, I said, Christians aren't commanded to go to church, and we don't have to go to church in that sense. Well, I wasn't saying for us not to go to church or we shouldn't go to church. I was just saying there's no law in scripture that says we have to go to church. And of course, this was met with a lot of resistance. It effectively ended the friendship because this Christian friend of mine just was just thrown back at the idea that I would even suggest that we don't have to go to church. We're not commanded to go to church. When I say that, I'm saying it's like, well, is church really a place that we go to fellowship like people believe, or what is it more like? To me, it's more like a movie theater. We go to the movies, and prior to the movie starting, we have a little conversation, we chit chat, we laugh. But once the movie starts, we're commanded to be quiet. The little M&M commercials come on, or the little dance and let's all go to the movies cartoon comes on and tells us to be quiet. Why? Because if you're not quiet, you can't hear the message. The same thing is, you can't hear the movie. The same thing at a church. If you're talking and carrying on during the message, you can't hear it. So is that really fellowship going on, or what is commonly said to be fellowship? No, it's not. Well, people will bring up Hebrews chapter 10, verse 24, 25 as their foundational scripture for this belief that we're commanded to go to church. In the verse, it reads, "And let us consider one another in order to stir up love and good works, not forsaking the assembling of ourselves together, as it is the manner of some, but exhorting one another, and so much more as you see the day approaching." The key in this passage is in verse 25, where it says, not forsaking the assembly of ourselves. Well, to forsake means to abandon or desert. And that's what people think. When you say we're not commanded to go to church, you don't have to go to church, they're thinking, well, I'm just abandoning fellowshipping or seeing other Christians or being around other Christians. Well, that's not the case. And assembling just means gathering together in one place. It doesn't mean gathering together in the same place every week at the same time with everybody else. That's all it means. So basically, the best thing I've heard about this is that when it comes to going to church or believing we're commanded to go to church, people are more concerned with assembling than they are with assembling with like-minded believers. Because if you think about it, do you have fellowship with people that you don't believe alike? Now, we often think that, well, we all believe in Jesus. Well, that's true. But often that's where it stops. Do we believe the same about the gospel? Do we believe the same about the Christian life? Do we believe the same about our inheritance? Do we believe the same about things like forgiveness, water baptism, and going to church? Do we believe all the same? No. Obviously, I don't. In the location I live now, there is one person that I know of that believes like I do. And we keep in contact with each other. We see each other. We talk about the things of the Lord. Why? Because we have like-mindedness. We agree. We have unity in that sense. But most people don't realize that that's why you fellowship together, because you believe the same. And I don't believe the same about this verse, or in many cases what our inheritance means, or what it means to be a Christian. For me, when I first came to the Lord, I went a couple of years without church fellowship. Why? Because I wasn't agreeing with what was being taught. And so why would I go there? Why would I support that? Why would I pay to hear that message when I don't agree with it? And it was in that time I found fellowship online with people. And this is over 20 years ago. And to this day, I still have friendships with those people that I met online, many of which I have never even met in person. And why do we have a bond or unity? Because we have a like-mindedness. We believe the same things about the faith. But and so it's online. When I did find a church, I found like-minded believers, and I would go all the time. But I've met in homes, I've met in libraries, I've met in a playroom at a YMCA, I've met at a elementary school, and of course, like I said, I've met with people online, and in as many places as I can find, even coffee shops at times. It's about fellowship. It's about like-mindedness. It's not about you have to go to church on Sunday morning or Saturday afternoon or Wednesday night whenever the doors are open. That's not what it is. My thing is that true assembly involves people who agree with each other. Jesus even said in Matthew 18 and 20 that wherever two or more are gathered in my name, I am in the midst. Even if you're by yourself, Jesus is in the midst and there is fellowship there. So you may be alone, but you're not by yourself because God is always with you and you can definitely have fellowship with him. But people never realize that. Like for me, when I say not going to church, it's like, well, we're not commanded to go. It doesn't mean that I don't want a fellowship with like-minded believers. It doesn't mean I don't have a heart for fellow believers, or I don't love them, or I don't want to be around them. It's that, well, other than we all believe in Jesus Christ, that's where the unity ends. So why would I want to be around that? They wouldn't want to be around me because when they found out what I believe, as my friend did, they basically cut off communication with me. The relationship stopped at that point. So what are we supposed to do? Argue about it all the time? There was no fellowship there. So what this verse is telling us is what it's telling us. Do not forsake the gathering or the assembling of each other. And like I said, you can meet wherever two or more are gathered in the name of Christ. Whether that's the home or a church, it doesn't matter. But quite honestly, going to church is kind of in violation of Hebrews 10, 24 and 25 because you aren't fellowshipping. You're not getting together and learning from each other and talking with each other and sharpening each other's swords, if you will, going back and forth with the scripture. It's just some general pleasantries before and after the church service. Now you may get together outside of that in your homes or go to lunch or go to dinner or meet later in the week for true fellowship, but usually that's a smaller group, which is probably best when it concerns trying to get to know each other and trying to study the scriptures, because the more people you get talking, and you also get the more people not paying attention, simply because there's just too much going on. So you need to be more in a isolated, more intimate situation. But unfortunately, many Christians, when you don't fall in line with the go to church, then they call you a Lone Ranger Christian, that you're promoting isolationism or things of that nature, which is not true. They're just basically being legalistic about a verse that's not a legalistic verse, because we're not under any law. So there is no law saying go to church. The early church didn't go to church. They met in homes. Some went to the synagogue because they were still under that legalistic Jewish bondage that they were brought up in. But either way, they met where they could and when they could and how they could, for the breaking of bread and the studying of scriptures. That's what it was. That's what true fellowship is. That's how we encourage each other. We can't encourage each other if we don't agree with each other. And if we aren't talking to each other when we are with each other, how are we encouraging one another? We're just assembling. Do you really talk that much to the people next to you in a movie theater or a concert setting or even a restaurant? You're talking to the people you know, even though the place is packed. So that's not even really true fellowship. It's wherever two or more are gathered. That's where the fellowship comes. Two people that are like-minded. That's where the unity comes. That's where the fellowship comes. That's what we agree on. And that's what we need to keep continually to tell each other. So don't let anybody put you in bondage or condemn you if you choose not to go to their church or you would choose to find fellowship elsewhere. God is with you and you're perfectly fine. You're actually probably adhering to this verse, if you will, better than they are to tell you need to go to church. I hope that encourages you. Grace and peace.